Hello, Legionnaires, and welcome back to Legions of Miniatures. Today I'm joined by Callum, and we're going to be taking our first foray into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I've been DMing for the best part of 10 years through a variety of different systems, from Dark Heresy to D&D 3.5, Pathfinder, and now D&D 5th Edition. And I run a couple of campaigns parallel to one another in the same setting and world at the same time, so technically they can bump into each other. But Callum is a victim in both of those.
I won't say victim. It's a pleasure.
I mean, I say victim. And across these, you are now starting to get to the point where both parties are nearly 10th level. And this comes to the point where you're starting to get quite a few magic items come in, and it really changes how the classes and the characters, even just themselves, operate and adapt. And also, both of you, both groups, have got a nice degree of multi-classing in there, which kind of skews things a little bit. And so we're getting to a point where if I want to set up a challenge for you guys, just dipping into the monster manual and taking what I find, it's not really always suitable. So what I thought we could do today, Callum, is seeing as you did a short stint DMing a arc of my campaign,
Like a spin-off campaign.
yeah, we could sit down today and use this Google sheet, this Excel spreadsheet that I've just thrown together as a means of sort of, I guess, predicting how dangerous or suitable a NPC character or a homebrewed monster is, and then hopefully we can put out this Google sheet to people at home to view, and they can make copies and play around a little bit. And it's not. I'm not going to go out and say it's the most in detail item that's ever been conceived. It really isn't, but it provides a good little bit of information on which to base your initial design. And what we'll do is we'll work through that initial design, and then we'll expand a little bit further and see how this can be used to inform decisions on top of that to really make a more unique monster. Sound good?
Sounds very good, yeah. Go on, mate.
Fantastic. So, the first thing that I think that we need to know when we're making a monster is who's our party. Okay, so on the right hand side of the screen here, that you've been able to see since the start of the video, is a series of information about the players. So let's go ahead and assume that in this game we've got ourselves a party of 4 guys, because 4 is the sort of the standard D&D party. And let's go super standard and say we've got a fighter, we've got a cleric, we've got a rogue, and a wizard. Now, let's go ahead and put these guys at, say, what level do you think we should go for? I think we're talking about 10th level.
10, yeah.
Yeah, so 10th level. And let's assume that these guys are... that they've stuck into, like, consistently in their class. So the rogue is going to be doing his big sneak attacks. The wizard is going to be doing... he's going to be doing his spells, but wizards are much more of a battlefield control class. And so we'll only look for their damage output. We're only going to look at, say, he's chucking firebolt around the place. Cleric.
That is a very balanced team anyway, so
Yeah.
I don't think multi-classing would be.
Cleric's going to come in with maybe some like sacred flames. He's going to be doing a couple of d8 damage, and the fighter is going to be coming in. Let's make the fighter not a sword and shield guy. Let's make him. Let's give him, say, a great sword, so he's going to do 2d6 damage. Okay, and he's level 10, so let's make it a +2 great sword. Okay. So he's probably got like a +4 strength bonus and a +2 greatsword. So in this total mod for the fighter, we can go ahead and just put... so he's got his 4 strength bonus and he's got +2 greatsword. So that's that there. Let's go ahead and look at the damage dice. So he's normally doing 2d6. Let's be favourable. No, let's just take straight average. So on 2d6, the average that we're going to get is 7. We just add the maximum number to the lowest number. That's how you find the average on 2 dice. So let's say he does an average of 7 damage, but fighters at 10th level, they're going to make 2 attacks a turn. So we're just going to go ahead and double that. So it's going to be 14 there and 12 there. And this sheet, what it does is it's just going to calculate the average damage that a fighter will do in a turn. And we're not going to worry about, say, action surge. That's and we're not going to worry about healing and actual use of spells. Those are what we're going to consider resources. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if a party doesn't burn resources, doesn't use resources in a fight, they're probably going to die because they're not making use of their class. So it's things like healing potions, action surge, second wind. For a wizard, it's any of the spells that they're going to cast: fireball, enlarge, or diminish, or all these kinds of things. For a cleric, it's going to be healing word, cure wounds, and all the other spells that clerics have got access to. Rogues don't have so many of these choice abilities, but what they will have is the opportunity to use all the activatable magic items that they've gathered hold of, which do have charges. So these are things that you have a limited amount of, and in a combat you'll want to have your characters use some of this in order to survive. You'll want them to use more of it to survive more easily. And if we're going to have multiple adventuring days, or multiple encounters rather, in an adventuring day, so that's between long rests. They can take short rests in between, but we still want them to be able to maybe fight multiple times in a day, because realistically, if your party's going down into some evil crypts, they're not going there for the next week to do 7 encounters, 1 a day, taking a rest in between. They need to get through this keep and storm it in, realistically, 1 day, preferably a couple of hours. So you're going to want to look at them having maybe 2 encounters, then a short rest, and then maybe another couple of encounters, a short rest, and then a boss fight. That kind of thing. So when we work through this, we're not going to look at our players expending resources when we're looking at the capability of the party.
Okay.
So, fighter at 10th level, if he's got a +2 constitution bonus, which seems reasonable, he's going to have 12 from first level. So let's make that 12, and then he's got 9 levels of... let's just say he takes average, and we'll say he takes average for this particular party. At home, if you're doing it for your own party, just go ahead and put in the values for your actual party. So 9 levels of what's that? 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay, so our fighter's got 84 hit points. Okay.
Okay, it's pretty decent.
That's the hit bonus. Let's put that there. His hit bonus. He's 10th level, so that's a +4 proficiency bonus. We've already said he's got a +4 strength bonus. So that's going to be and a +2 weapon, so that's going to be 10.
Yep.
And his armor class. He should have full plate.
We should have heavy army. Yeah,
so let's put him in full plate. There we are, 18. Okay, sorry about that. We've just had a knock at the door, so we're going to have to just resume from where we got to. We got to the cleric. So our cleric's damage is looking at 2d8. So average of 2d8 is 10. 10. There we are. Is it 10? Yes, it is 10. No, it's 4.5. It's 9. So he's doing 9 damage. His total modifiers, there's no modifiers to Sacred Flame. His hit bonus, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to assume that it is successful. So we'll just actually go ahead and put in we'll put in his proficiency modifier and his wisdom bonus. So he's a cleric. He's going to have at least a wisdom bonus of 4 wisdom. So let's just put in 8. Let's just put 8 in there. His hit points, we've got a 10th level cleric. So it's going to be, and let's be honest, if you're playing a caster class that has the potential to hold on to some concentration spells, you're going to want a constitution bonus of at least +2. So for our wizard and for our cleric, we'll assume a +2 constitution bonus. So at first level, he is going to get 10 hit points, and then the 9 levels thereafter, he'll take average on d8, which is 5, +2 is going to be 7. While we're at this HP, let's just do the rogue as well. So he's going to go ahead and have only a +1 constitution bonus, assuming he's rolled okay. He's decided to lean into his dexterity, leave his strength behind a little bit as a sort of like one of the weaker stats, and then keep his intelligence, wisdom, and charisma okay. But this is a rogue who has prioritized intelligence, dexterity, then constitution, then wisdom and charisma, finally strength. So let's say he's got +1 bonus. He gets 9 at the first level, and then he gets 9 lots of 6. And then our wizard is going to come in, and poor chap, well, he's a wizard. He knows he's flimsy. He's got lots of concentration spells he needs to hold on to, but he needs to keep that intelligence high. So he's going to prioritize his constitution right after his intelligence. So we'll say he's got a +3 constitution bonus here. But as I say before, when it comes down to using your party, don't worry about theoreticals. Put in your party's data. So he's got... So we're looking at an average hit points in the party of 73 hit points. So we're going to use that when looking at the amount of damage our monster does to sort of get an idea of how much damage does the monster need to do in order to really force the party to start using their resources. And we're also going to use it to ensure that we don't get to a point where this monster in 3 turns can do enough damage to kill the entire party. Unless, of course, it's our goal. I'm not saying you should always try to kill your party, but
make it a bit of a
there
challenge.
are certainly very unique situations where you might want to actively just kill the whole party with a monster very quickly. Say, okay guys, first encounter of the day, here's a monster, and it kills them all in like 2 rounds of combat. They all end up in the afterlife. You spend the rest of the session battling your way out of the afterlife, and when they get back, they've now leveled up a couple of times, maybe over a couple of sessions, battling their way out of the afterlife, get back, fight the monster that killed them to begin with, and now they're strong enough to defeat it. Hooray. That would be one example I'd come up with of when you just want to murder your party.
Reasonable. Makes sense.
So let's look at our cleric's AC. He's not going to have a great dexterity, and let's put him in some medium armor. So maybe he's got +1 dex bonus. Put him in some medium armor with an AC of like 14. So let's give him an AC of 15 total. Our rogue, if our rogue is worth his salt, he's got at least a +4 dexterity bonus. So he's looking at a 14 AC minimum. He's going to be in some light armor. So let's put him in studded leather for that 16 AC. And our wizard, he really focused on constitution and then intelligence. So the next sort of thing that you kind of looking at it as wizard is either going to be charisma if you want to have a sort of a voice of the party kind of deal, or dexterity. Either way, I think we're looking at least a +1 bonus in this, and then mage armor. Mage armor is going to be 14, so let's get him in at 15. So we're looking at an average armor class of 16. This is going to sort of tell us kind of how much or how likely our monster is to going to be able to hit the party, which allows us to adjust the damage that we're expecting him to put out in our predictions to kind of get a feel for what that outcome will be. So our rogue, 10th level, how many d6 is that on sneak attack? Let's give him a short sword as well. So it's going to be at least 1d6, and then I think it's 2 dice at first level. I should have had a player's handbook. Oh, I do have a player's handbook in hand.
I have a feeling that it goes up from starting at
I
first,
think
fifth,
it's about
11th,
half
and
their level. So at 10th level, 5d6. Yeah, half their level. Rounding
Okay.
up. So yes. So we're going to have at least 6d6. So let's take average on that. Average on 2d6 is 7. So average on 6d6 is going to be... I should know the answer. There's 21. And total modifiers, as I say, he's going to have a decent dexterity bonus. We gave him +4 at least, so we'll just give us +4 here. And, you know, by now, maybe he's got a +1 dagger or a +1 short sword. So we're going to have him whack it up to... we gave the fighter a +2 weapon, didn't we? So we'll give him a +2 weapon as well. There we are. 6. So we're expecting our rogue to put out about 27 damage on average in a turn. The thing to remember with the rogue here is... if he's not like... We'll say he's a thief rogue as opposed to an assassin, because if he's an assassin, that's going to explode a little bit more, and that's using a resource, kind of, making use of the assassinate crit, and the ways around that aren't... I don't think... It isn't to make your monster so powerful that it just eats a rogue's assassinate, because then you're sort of declining them that opportunity to be an assassin. It's knowing which encounters can be bypassed if the rogue successfully assassinates something, and just being aware of that. So when you're designing your course of encounters, having some that the rogue can just say, this is the one that I destroy, or the wizard saying, you know, this is the one that I'll polymorph and we'll just walk past it and no problem. Those are the things that we need to think about. Rogue's hit bonus, same, he's got +2 weapons, so it's going to be about the same as the fighter. And then we come on to the wizard. Let's say he's got firebolts, so it's going to be 2d10. D10 has an average of 5.5, so that's going to do 11 damage a turn, and no modifiers, and he's going to have a hit bonus of 8, like the cleric. So this gives us the basic statistics of what we're looking at in our party. It tells us that each turn we can expect the whole party to do about 73 points of damage. The average member of the party has a +9 hit bonus, so that means that 50% of the time they'll hit someone with an armor class of 19 or higher. The average HP in the party is 73, so if a creature can do 73 damage over the course of the encounter, we're going to at least force someone to use some form of resource in order to avoid death. Okay, or we're going to force the average member of the party to avoid death by spending a resource. And then the armor class for the party of 16 means that if our monster has more than a +6 hit bonus, it's going to be hitting more than 50% of the time. In general, it is more fun to hit a monster and deal damage to it if it's a HP tank, so it's just going to eat a lot of hits, but you are at least dealing damage to it. That is more fun than trying to hit it and failing. So if we want our encounter to be fun, we'd rather our players hit the monster and not kill it than fail to hit the monster and not even get the opportunity to roll dice. Rolling dice is fun, and it also plays into the idea of you are a hero and you're actively like weakening this creature steadily over time, as opposed to you're trying to hit it and it's just like, whatever, who are you? I don't even care. Again, that's not always going to be the case. If you want to go ahead and really have a blood glass cannon kind of character that is a swordsmaster, then giving them a higher armor class so it's very difficult to hit them, but like one solid hit will take them down. That could make an interesting dynamic for an encounter. It might not be fun in the moment, but it'll definitely be memorable in the long term, and one that they'll talk back about. So a lot of these rules aren't hard and fast, they're just sort of recommendations and ideas. But now that we've got our profile for our characters that the spreadsheet has calculated over in this region here, I can move us over to the right hand side now of the spreadsheet, where I have some information about the monster, and already we are seeing numbers. So let's not focus on this bit over here just yet. Let's just fill that in black for the moment now so we don't have to get disturbed or scared by it. So this area over here is what we're going to look at first of all. Give us a monster, Callum. What kind of monster should we make?
Ooh. Well, given in my campaign, we had a lot of goblins. I think one of the fun things I enjoyed making was a troll.
Okay, let's make a troll then.
Yeah.
So, trolls are actually going to be one of those interesting ones where we can sort of look at the hit points and use that to try and it's gonna play funny because the troll is gonna have that regeneration. So, each turn we know our players can do, is it 73 hit points of damage?
It was 73, I believe.
Which is very interesting because our theoretical party also does approximately 70, has an average HP of 73. It's very funny. Our party could, on average, kill a party member every turn. So, we got 73. We would ideally like our monster to stay alive for at least 3 turns. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to hope to adjust the armor class and the HP so that the HP of the monster, on average, is about the damage that a party will deal in 3 turns. This means that if they're unlucky, maybe the combat extends to 5 turns, and if they are lucky, maybe it only goes for 1, maybe 2 turns. But it still gives everyone an opportunity to potentially act and get involved with the combat, and it's still going to provide the opportunity for the monster to do some attacks, and for things to go badly, and force the party to make use of more of their resources. So, let's go ahead. How big do we want this troll to be? It's not going to be medium, so it's a question of, is it large or is it huge?
Well, against these people, I'm probably guessing large.
Let's go large. Okay, so it's medium, large, then huge. That's the rating. Yep. So we're going to go with large. So here's one little tip that you'll find in the monster manual. Tiny creatures have a D4 hit dice. Small creatures of a D6, medium creatures of a D8, large creatures a D10, huge creatures a D12, and gargantuan creatures a D20 hit dice. So, we're making a large creature, let's give it a D10 hit die. Okay, and this is a troll, so we're looking at something that's fairly strong, so let's just go ahead and put in 16 for now. We can always adjust this up later. It's going to be a little bit, I don't think it's going to be slow, but it's not going to be fast either. So we'll leave its dexterity at 10. Its constitution, trolls are tough. If you forgive my almost French there. So we're going to want at least an 18. I'd be even tempted to say 20 on their constitution. Like this thing is beefy and it regenerates and it heals. This thing is hardy AF. Intelligence. Trolls aren't like ogres. They're not thick, but they're not smart either. So let's leave that. Let's put it at 9 maybe. So it's -1 modifier, but it's nothing crippling. Wisdom. These things do live under bridges. They are, like that's the archetype, isn't it? The troll under the bridge and is aware of the traveler coming by, and some of them pose riddles, so they have at least some kind of. Maybe if some of them pose riddles, maybe we should make it a bit more intelligent. Maybe we should put it up at 12. But these things aren't stupid either. So I think we should maybe bring their wisdom a little bit higher. They're not ill perceptive. So let's give it a +2 perception bonus. Let's give it a 14. And then charisma. Nobody likes a troll. If you guys like trolls, leave it in the comments below. And we'll delete trolling comments. Sorry. So let's go ahead and give it a 7 in charisma for the -2 bonus. As you can see, I've actually written a code down here that finds out what the bonus is based on the stat. If you people are interested in it, just go ahead and take a look at this little bit of text up there. We're just looking at
I
the...
actually got these stats up for the troll.
What's the
Don't
troll
know
stats like?
Okay, so you want to know how close you are to it.
Go on.
So, strength is an 18.
Okay.
So it's like dexterity is actually 13.
13, they say it's a bit faster, do they? Okay.
Yeah. This is your constitution spot on.
I thought it might be.
Spot on with the constitution.
Okay, intelligence.
Intelligence is actually a 7.
Okay, I'm gonna executive decision disagree there. Trolls make riddles, and they
Yeah.
eat people who fail them. They're smart. Wisdom.
Yeah. Wisdom's a 9.
It's 9.
That one's the biggest
I'm not sure I
shock, I
agree
think.
with that one.
Yeah.
Okay, and
As you
charisma.
say, this is your world, so you get to like say otherwise. Charisma is 7.
7. Okay, yeah. So we're
Yeah.
making a smarter, wiser kind of troll. This is the kind
Yeah.
of troll that will threaten a level 10 party, as opposed to a level 5 party. You know, this is the troll who said, actually, I am going to live under the bridge. And, I am going to be reasonable and I'm going to give people riddles. So at least they have the opportunity not to be eaten. And so
Having
has
the
been
higher
allowed to live.
wisdom, having that higher wisdom as well, though, is going to be very nice for its perception.
Yep.
Which already has a keen smell, so that's going to make it just harder to get by.
So it's really good that you're sort of pointing out these things from the monster manual. We should be looking for inspiration at the very least from what already exists in D&D. And we should be looking at inspiration as sort of I was saying, things like that, like the riddles under the bridge and being able to sort of notice when people are approaching its lair to creep out. We need to be taking these inspirations from what already exists in D&D and what we know in our own mythology, because that way we can make the most reasonable for the game system, but also interesting in our sort of our D&D mythos monsters. So let's see, we're about 20 minutes in now. So we've created ourselves a stat line for our troll, and we can look at its HP. We need it to last 3 turns approximately. So we're going to go ahead and 73 times 3 is about 210 hit points. So we're going to aim for just underneath 210 because trolls do have that regeneration. No, we are going to aim for just over 210 average hit points because trolls have that regeneration. That is something that the players need to engage with. That is them spending a resource to defeat the troll.
It's a kind of combat.
Yes, they are using the resource of fire. It's not really a limited resource, but it is one or acid, but it is one they're going to have to get hold of. And knowing if the wizard's using firebolt, that's a really easy one for them to get hold of.
Yeah.
And as a level 10 party, one of them should be able to make an arcana or a nature check or a religion check or something, depending on how trolls exist in your world. And, very easily come in at knowing trolls regenerate really easily. Fire stops regeneration. So, once we've got the constitution in and the hit dice in, we can start increasing our levels. For the troll here, this basically tells us how many hit dice it has. It's this, unlike player characters, this won't tell us the troll's proficiency bonus. There we are, 224 max HP there. Hang on, let's keep going. So yeah, there we are. A level 20 troll is D10 hit points, average of 218 HP, and a max of 298 HP. If you've got like a party that, if you have a limited time and you are doing like one encounter per day, then the max HP might be something you want to look at a bit more. Now, trolls, I'm going to say that their sort of natural scaly armor is probably going to be the more important element of their armor class. So I think it's probably going to have a total armor class of about 15, 14 from just their skin, kind of like a mage armor deal, and then 1 from their dexterity. Does that seem reasonable to you, Callum?
Well, I've got to say, I got the stats up, and they actually agree. So, yeah,
They agree.
I think
Okay. So maybe we're going to bump this up to 16, just because we're looking at a little bit of a higher level creature here. With our party's average hit bonus of 9, they should be really easily able to hit this. They're looking for a 7 or higher to hit. That might be too easy to hit, actually. I'm saying so I might actually bump it up to 17 as well. An 8 or higher to hit means that they're going to be hitting 60% of the time, which is a good. That's a good feeling.
Okay.
Now we want to design its attack. We want to know how much damage it's going to do, and maybe we can create something like a breath weapon for the troll, and we'll come on to that a little bit later on in the video. But for now, let's. But that's kind of like a troll's resource. Like the troll, in order to avoid dying, is going to spend a resource. The players, in order to avoid dying, are going to spend a resource, and it comes down to like who's willing to spend more resources. So let's look at the troll first of all, and he's going to have some nasty claws. I think claws, to call them more damaging than a short sword, is going to be a bit of a stretch. So let's go ahead and give it a short sword damage profile. It's going to do at least d6 damage. It's a strength-based weapon. It's going to have a 4+ modifier. His hit bonus, let's see. We want this to be a challenge for a party of level 10. So it's going to be at least a level 10 challenge rating. So it's going to have a 4+ proficiency bonus, and it's got a 4+ strength modifier, so it's going to have 8+8 to hit. Now, over here, this average damage per turn column. Oh, hang on, you guys can't see that. There we are. This average damage per turn column here. What that's doing is it's telling us, based on its likelihood to hit, what is the average damage it will do in a turn. So the troll does an average of 8 damage, but with a +8 hit modifier against the target of 16 rather, it's only hitting about 60% of the time. So it's about the same as the players. That's sitting in a nice sweet point there, I think. Troll's going to hit 60% of the time. Players are going to hit 60% of the time. That's about right. Maybe we want the troll to be a little bit higher up. Let's say that this troll is I don't know, in some way blessed. It has some kind of additional hit bonus. Actually, no, we're going to leave that there. What we will do, however, is we'll give it more attacks. Let's make it level 10. Let's give it 3 attacks with its claws, which will allow it to do an average of 14 damage per turn. And we'll use this as a nice start point. So now let's take a look at this area that I blacked out earlier. So, what we can see here is that based on the party's damage and hit bonus, they're going to do an average of 43 damage a turn, which means it will take approximately 5 turns to kill the troll. That is a bit too long of a combat encounter in my opinion, and so let's go ahead and decrease its HP. Say 18... So we just want to get this number in this box here. Oh, hang on. Let's bring you guys across some more. There we are. So this is the area I was just talking about there. Very sorry. We could see before, if I just put us back up to the same amount of hit points we had before, this value here, on average, is going to take 4.977 turns. That's basically 5. Let's just go ahead and actually bring the number of decimal points on this number down. Okay. And if it's going to take them about 5 turns to kill, and then maybe 7 turns based on the upper limit, that's probably a little bit too long for our tastes. So we would rather it have either slightly less health or a slightly lower armor class. We buffed the armor class up a moment ago, so let's just put it back down to 16. And that brings our the amount of time it's going to be alive for, brings it down a bit. But it's still a bit too high. I would rather this encounter sort of last 3 turns, guarantees that everyone's going to get an opportunity to fight, and sort of really enables the party to get involved and do a couple of little things without it taking too long. So let's go ahead and take that down to 15. Which puts it as 3.4, 14. There we are. So if it's got an average hit points of 153, with its armor class, it's going to take about 3 turns to kill. This is a sweet spot. In doing that, however, we are reducing the amount of damage it's going to be able to do over the course of the encounter. And so, we can see that on average, it will only be able to kill half of a player character. This is not going to force them to use any resources. This is not a challenging encounter for them. So its damage, excuse me just a moment, as I am very sure I'm about to sneeze. And we are back. I didn't sneeze, but better safe than sorry. Especially with my sneezes. So, it's killing about a sixth of a player. This is not enough to force them to use any resources. It is too easy of an encounter. So we're going to want to up its damage a bit. Each of its claws, if it's kind of like a short sword, each of its claws are going to be like a short sword. So let's go ahead and give it a couple more damage dice. If we bump it up to maybe 2 damage dice, we can see it almost kills a player character each turn here. Now, we suggested that maybe it might have a nasty breath weapon, so we'll leave it at just being able to kill just under 1 player character with its claws over the course of the encounter, so that we can give it a nasty breath weapon that'll, how should we say this? Really, really make the players think about using some of their own resources. But almost killing 1 player character with its claws, this is going to mean that either the cleric is going to have to use a cast of Cure Wounds, or the fighter is going to have to use Second Wind, or something similar to that. Let's go ahead now, and I'm sorry, I should say, if it's max HP, then we're killing about 1 1/3 of the players in the party, so several of them are going to want to have to use some resources. So this is really a point where you have to choose based on how many encounters you have in a day. If you're having maybe like 4 or 5 encounters in one day, you probably only want to spend 1 or 2 of your players' resources. So sitting at 0.95 players killed is about right. If you're only going to have maybe 2 encounters in a day, you might want to spend much more of their resources, in which case I would say go ahead and make sure each of those dice do 3d6 damage and really start pushing the players. So this is something that you're going to have to practice. Start lower, in my general opinion. It's easier to start slightly low, not too low. It's easier to almost have an encounter that's slightly too easy and then buff the next one up than it is to have an encounter that was too hard and then try desperately to find a way of making the next one really weak, or accounting the next one for the fact that the party is now saying, no, we're taking a long rest here. So that's some of the things that we need to have in mind. If we're going to make a breath attack, we can very easily come back across and look at our players. They have an average of 73 hit points, so we don't want our breath attack to go ahead and do much more than that. Breath weapons often have a 5 to 6 recharge, so you roll a 6-sided dice. On a 5 or 6 it recharges, so that's a 1 in 3. What that means is in the course of our 3-turn battle, it should only get to use its breath attack once. Okay? So let's go ahead and design a breath weapon. It's probably going to want a dexterity saving throw, and this is where we want to come and start looking again at our player characters. What are our dexterity saving throws going to be? Our the only person in our party who's going to have a proficiency in dexterity saving throws is the rogue.
Rogue, yeah.
So we're going to look at the fight of the cleric and the wizard. We want them to be less likely than average to pass the saving throw. So realistically, the highest that they might have here is a +3 bonus. So we want our dexterity saving throw to at least be a DC 13, but the rogue is going to have a +7 bonus. And so let's aim sort of in the middle of there. So it's between 13 and 17, DC 15. That is a reasonable dexterity save for our party to have to make, and it's going to more or less guarantee that a bunch of our players are going to be taking a chunk of damage here. So we make it DC 13. Let's go ahead and use some D6s as our weapons. Let's make this tax here, claws. Let's make this breath. So if we're going to go ahead and look at this, it's only going to make one attack, and we're going to ignore this average damage a turn column because this is all set up here for a weapon attack, which a claw would be. We're just going to look at the average damage that it's going to do. And we're going to remember that this does it to each player. So we don't want to completely floor the whole party. And you're going to have to make the decision. Do you want this to be a line weapon, in which case you can probably hit 2 players in the party really happily? Or do you want this to be a cone? If it's going to be a cone, how many feet is it going to be? If it's a cone, you could probably, with good positioning, hit 3 members of the party. So that is a decision that you're going to have to make as to whether you want it to be a line or do you want it to be a cone. I think a line of a troll chucking up in a sort of a straight sort of line doing acid damage, that's going to be good enough. So if we're going to hit 2 members of the party, I don't want this attack to overall do more than half of 73. So 73 was our average hit points. If it's going to hit 2 people, I want that to be divided between 2 people. So 73 points of damage divided by 2, that's going to be 36.5. So I don't really want it to do more than 36 points of damage. Let's make it some d6s. And we don't need a modifier for this. So let's just go ahead and say 8d6. 9d6. Yeah, 9d6. As a breath weapon. I think that's too many dice. 8d6 is a nice one because it's sort of a lightning bolt style thing. Let's just make this 68. There we are. That seems a bit more reasonable. So if you get hit by the breath weapon, 68 acid damage. It's going to take 30 points of health off of 2 characters. If they're unlucky, it's going to take 90 points of health total off of maybe 3 characters. And that will, I guarantee you, force the party to really
use its resources.
And we can even just go ahead and do a quick little calculation over here. If it does 2 turns of this, so if it's doing 2 turns of claws, so it's 3 claw attacks, each one doing oh, hang on, does that one already include the number of attacks? Yeah. So each turn it's going to do 21 damage. It does that for 2 turns. And then it does the breath weapon once. It's doing 73.2 damage. That is going to kill a party member on average. So it will force the resource use to occur. The benefit of the breath weapon over the claws is claws are more likely always going to go on 1 character, or maybe 2 characters. So the rogue and the fighter, they're kind of in melee. The claws are most likely going to go on those guys. And I believe the rogue actually has our lowest hit points of 63 here, so the rogue is actually in a danger zone. But he is more likely to survive the breath attack than others, and is also he's probably hiding behind the fighter, and the fighter is probably between the monster and the wizard and cleric. So he's actually also least likely to get targeted by the breath attack. But sort of just this layout here has given us an idea of the amount of life this monster has. The healing, I think we should just go ahead and poach that directly from the troll monster itself.
So if regenerate, I've got here is 10 hit points.
So it's just going to get 10 hit points. Is that on average, or is it 2d10 or something?
It's a regains 10 hit points at the start of his turn.
Okay, so 10 hit points at the start of his turn. effectively it's going to have another 30 hit points. That's not enough to make it. That could be enough to make it survive one extra turn if they don't deal with it. So just be aware that you, with a troll and its regeneration, that really can force it into the realm of forcing the players to really make use of those resources. When it comes down to damage vulnerabilities and damage resistances, what you have to consider is, in a generic sense, resistances to things like fire and other magical damage sources is effectively like reducing the player's damage. So if your wizard, let's say it has resistance to fire, let's say this is some weird troll who has resistance to fire, effectively our wizard is only going to do half as much damage, and so we have to be aware that we're going to lose 11. So those 11 hit points, damage that the wizard does, is probably going to go down a bit, and he might have to fall back onto a different damaging cantrip. And so it's just being aware that there are these additional plays in the back of our mind. So with this, in this video so far, we've explored how to see what your party is capable of doing. We've explored how the capability of the party influences our decision to adjust the stats on a monster. And it's just occurred to me that I didn't actually show the breath that we made, but really it was just a matter of, we're not going to use the average damage column here because we aren't looking at the well, as I said before, we're not looking at the average damage column because this is a one-time use sort of thing. If you get lucky on your dice, you might use it a second time, and we just want it to do the average damage that it does. We want that to be less than this average hit points that the party has. So, as I was saying, we've looked over how to assess what your party's capabilities, minimum capabilities are. We've looked at how to use that to inform the monster's HP and armor class. We've used that then to give our monster a weapon profile, and using that weapon profile, we have looked at how much damage the monster can do over the course of the encounter, and we've looked at how and why we should adjust that to try and get to a point where the monster is capable of killing player characters unless they start to exert some of their limited resources. Okay, so now we're coming into the final leg of this particular recording, and I'm gonna open myself up to a number of little questions from Callum now, and he's gonna try and poke all the holes possible in this system, and I'll sort of say why I think this still holds up. So Callum,
yep,
break my idea.
So, okay. So there's first things that I was wondering how you would try and take into account. So the first one is, if you have a huge variation in your team. Right. So let's say you've got one person who has rolled, like, because of course sometimes people like to roll for their HP. So someone managed to roll really high and another person rolled really low, and then you have this like complete difference where maybe one person has like double or even like 3 times the health of someone else. You know, how do you try to balance it in a way to stop that person with that maybe with full health dying so easily?
Okay. So let's just take a look at the numbers first of all, and just see what they say. So let's say our wizard actually did terribly for HP, and every single level they rolled a 1 instead. And let's put that.
Because you can also think,
well,
like,
I mean, I think if
there are
the
also
wizard was
ways
rolling,
to bump up your HP. imagine your fighter also went and got like the toughness feat,
Mhm.
which then that gives them an extra 2 per level.
Yeah, but if they took the
So
toughness
that's another
feat,
20
then
HP on top.
if they took the toughness feat, then they didn't increase one of their other stats. So that kind of balances itself out
Mm.
there. So, maybe they got some more hit points, but they're doing slightly less damage. And so that balances itself out a little bit.
Mm.
Because, uh, yeah, your monster's hit points would come down and its damage might increase up a little bit. When it comes to rolling badly, let's actually. Well, it wouldn't be likely that your wizard rolled like 1. But what you might see is someone playing a sort of like an intentionally frail character. So maybe they've put they've got
Like
like a -2 Constitution bonus.
I remember in one of our campaigns, I played a goldfish,
Yes,
which I think how much was like 14 HP or something.
the goldfish was not balanced.
No.
The goldfish was not. The goldfish was a combination of mistakes by me and mistakes by me.
But imagine you have like a character such really low health.
Yeah.
That's the case. Of course, that's
And
going to affect the average a lot because it will either drop it a lot, which will then make it like really easy for the other characters. And then if you have someone who has like really HP in the team, then it's going to be the monster's going to very heavy, and then all of them are going to be frightened. So you're going to have like this. All it needs is like one person to be so far off the others to kind of make it into a struggle for the others.
let's go ahead and work on the assumption that maybe the wizard did take that -2 Constitution bonus. So instead of getting,
Right.
instead of at first level getting 8 hit points, he's actually only getting 4 hit points. And later on, each level, rather than getting 7 hit points, he was instead getting 2 hit points. That puts
Mm.
him way down at 22 HP. And this is going to come in, and this brings our average hit points down to 60.
Mm.
So,
By this point, the average is less than even the rogue.
yeah, in this circumstance, we're still going to be looking at a situation of needing to be smart. So, we might even need something to accompany this particular troll. If I had a player who sat that far outside of the group norm, so they weren't all kind of around the same area. If like this is where the group is, but like the wizard's back here. In that circumstance, I would probably remove the wizard from the group when doing this work. Build the troll around the other 3 characters. Then I'd take the wizard and I build a monster or 2 around the wizard, and now introduce to this combat a troll and its 2 little henchmen. And those henchmen are in a position to force the use of resources on the wizard without causing instant death to the wizard. Because if we look at the troll here, it's got an average damage of 12. Its max damage is 16 from one of its claw attacks. It can't down the wizard in one hit, but over the course of a whole turn, if it focused all of its attacks on the wizard, on average it probably would knock him unconscious.
I mean, there's also the breath
Knocking
attack
unconscious
as well.
and the breath attack would knock him unconscious, wouldn't kill him outright.
No.
So that would be a case of like forcing, perhaps being too heavy-handed and forcing the use of resources. On the other hand, the party knows the wizard can't take a stiff breeze and should look at coming at this in a certain manner to protect the wizard. So perhaps the wizard's taking longer range spells, he stays off the side of the map more or less, from a sort of like an artillery position. Yeah, so those are the two ways I'd look at it. Either say, hey, party, you got to look after your wizard. Or take the wizard out, build the main monster for the rest of the party at a suitable level for them, then build a couple of little monsters that are together suitable for the wizard, and incorporating those all together, make the encounter. One thing, if doing that, having 3 monsters, which like total, say, challenge rating 10, is stronger than 1 monster of challenge rating 10 because of the extra actions. So, if you're doing that, you'll want to aim for the troll to be maybe only able to kill 0.9 of a player or 0.85 of a player, and for the little monsters that you're making to maybe only be able to kill 0.4 of the wizard. Okay, like the monsters, like honestly, this wizard, toss in some challenge rating 1 monsters, maybe like a couple of zombies or something, like swamp zombies or the swamp troll. And the zombies, people don't really want to, like the fighter wants to get in front of the troll and keep it focused. The rogue wants to kill the troll. The cleric, in the case of zombies, maybe zombies is a bad example because the cleric will just turn undead. But say it's goblins or something, say like a hobgoblin. Cleric doesn't really want to toe-to-toe the goblins. However, the cleric is present to help the wizard and keep near him and keep these foes away from him. And it might just be a case of the first few rounds of combat is just focus firing down these additional creatures. But the wizard should still be capable in a combat sense. We're just dealing with much more of a glass cannon style wizard. If we look at the other end of the spectrum and we look at the rogue, and if he is very, very incredibly powerful, because he kind of is. We're looking at his average damage of 21. However, on 5 d6, actually a total of 66, that's 36, and then a mod of 6 for another 6 points of damage. That's 42. That is the majority of the party's damage, like 2/3 of the party's total average damage from just the rogue. Circumstances like that, it's a little bit harder. And you might consider increasing the troll's HP to account for that. Or, once the troll has taken a big hit from a target of a high damage, it's an intelligent creature, have it focus that character and maybe force them to decide, do I want to hang around here and try and get in another really big lucky hit? Or do I want to pull back and actually not do as much damage this turn, but keep myself safe to have a resource spent on me to get me back and healed? And in that circumstance, effectively, you're taking the really lucky big blob of damage that they did on turn 1 and spreading it across 2 turns by making them decide to play risky or not. If they're going to play risky, then the dice fall as they may.
Okay, makes sense. So I think that leads into also if you had a character which was more reliant on resources.
Yep.
And a class that specifically is the bard, which doesn't really do damage and it's there to try and buff other people up.
Yep.
Not just that, I also think there are also certain monsters you come up against which may have more like mind effects and stuff, and deal.
Yep.
So they're not necessarily damage focused. I mean, how do you accommodate them into this?
Okay, so that's 2 questions. Let's start with the bard.
All right.
So the first thing to note about the bard is that even as far as their cantrips go, they don't have many. I think they have to actually branch into another class to get damage cantrips.
They do have this one that causes psychic damage. Is it hideous laugh? No, it's not hideous.
Oh yes, mockery, vicious mockery.
Vicious mockery, that's the one. Yes.
Vicious mockery is an interesting one.
Yeah.
So it's a charisma saving throw, so we can actually assume that our monster is not going to pass that very often. And
7.
It does put disadvantage on the attack roll, which we can adjust the sheet to calculate, but as it's going out, maybe I'll write up a line for calculating that. But effectively, Vicious Mockery is going to do d4 damage, so we could even just like put in the rogue. Does d4 damage, I think, per level, so at level 10 I'll do 2d4. But we can put that in as the Bard's damage output, as their like basic damage. And we can then easily effect... So, disadvantage approximately is a -5 penalty. Approximately.
Yeah.
And so we can actually apply that. So if I went to come across here, and we were to take a look at the clause, I could change the clause here down to 2, and I could have, I could write Vicious Mockery Claw, and it's 1 attack. It's not hitting on an 8 anymore, because it's got a -5, so it's only a 3. And then it's just 2d6 with a modifier of 4. And then we can take that, copy that there, put that there. And that is... That should be an average, that should be a sum. And that then gives us what our total damage is. So by applying the Bard's Vicious Mockery per turn, we actually don't so much cause more damage to the monster as we scale down the amount of damage it does. Okay.
I see. Yeah.
And at the same time, we'll have lower damage so our turns to kill the monster will go up. And so we'll then adjust the hit points of the monster down to account for the fact we got the Bard there. At the same time, however, as you do mention, the Bard has a lot of resources to play with. So things like Bardic Inspiration, they've probably got like 3 of those. And I'm just checking to see, because one other thing I wanted to check is, does that happen on a long rest or a short rest that they get these back? It's only a long rest. So
long rest, yeah.
Effectively, the Bard's Bardic Inspiration can be treated like a spell slot.
Yeah.
And depending on the type of Bard they are, that actually then can help them cause damage. So I leave that as a resource. Like, the Bard is expending its resource to keep the party alive. The Bard has more resources to spend to keep the party alive, but it doesn't do as much damage normally. Although many Bards will try and get their hands on a dancing sword or an enchanted like crossbow or longbow or something, just to give them some damage on their action above a Vicious Mockery, which, while it does do something to disable the monster, against the monster with a higher charisma, they're not going to be able to lean on that much. So a Bard with a nice bow is still going to do some damage, not as much damage as, say, a Cleric, but they'll be using more of their larger pool of resources.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's how it balances.
And I think it's kind of like vice versa as well. If you were to think about, let's say, monsters that can also rely on resources affecting people.
That was it, yes, because the second half of your question was on creatures that have like a fear effect and similar.
Yeah.
Okay. That's more difficult to simulate. So what you have to think about there is that's going to be more of a less something that you simulate on here, but more something you need to think about with the average number of players that the monsters will be able to kill. So if we look at a fear effect, say the hideous appearance of a hag, of a water hag or a sea hag, that's going to result in a wisdom saving throw when people see it, and if they fail the wisdom saving throw, they get in the frightened condition, which imposes disadvantage and some movement restrictions. So we've already looked at how disadvantage functions. It effectively gives you a -5 hit bonus, and so you're looking at approximately reducing the well, if you've got a hit bonus of like +8, you're going down by 5, you're approximately reducing your damage by about a third. So there will be a time period in which the hag has effectively 33% more hit points. So you can account for that by looking either to have the fight only last 2 rounds and then buff it up to 3 when you include the vicious, the hideous appearance, or you can not account for it and have it be one of those things like the Troll's regeneration, whereby it's, if the players are doing their research, they know that the hag's going to have this hideous appearance thing, and they're going to look for something to like fortify them against fear. And then it's a matter of they're spending a resource in the form of some kind of potion to guard them against fear, or give them advantage on wisdom saving throws against fear, or something like that.
Okay. So I think that could also lead into, if with your certain encounters, there is always sort of like lair actions and certain things that are more focused on terrain, which can sway a battle in someone's favor. So how do you also take into account of that?
Okay, so when it comes into lair actions, these are items that the monster can do, and so you should probably account for any damaging lair actions in the attacks of the monster and the damage output on its average damage output. When it comes to terrain, that is something that it really kind of depends. If you're building a monster because you want like a collection of beasts on hand for a random encounter because the party is stalled, so hurrah, orcs attack to steal from Matthew Colville there, then you can't really build this with the terrain in mind because you don't necessarily know the situation that this will occur in. And so you can just make a monster, and then beneficial terrain means they don't spend as many resources. Detrimental terrain means they're going to have to spend more resources, and they shouldn't have been lingering about so much. When it comes to an encounter where you have got a scene in your mind, you're going to need to think about how the terrain functions. So if the terrain and it means that melee fighters, like our rogue and our fighter in this particular example, if it means that they can't get there for the first round of combat, we effectively have added their average damage output to the creature's average health. In those circumstances, you're left in a situation where you have some narrative decisions to make. Is this going to be a situation where it's just not in the party's favor, and this is going to be hard for them? In which case, stuff them. Just make the monster set to be a challenge. If the scenery then adds further challenge on top of that, the monster's not changing, but the party still has to deal with it. Realistically, if you make a monster of a suitable difficulty to potentially down one member of the party if they don't use resources, then short of trapping the party into a chamber made of indestructible bedrock, where a small hole in the ceiling provides a monster like +5 to its armor class and enables it to shoot down at you 3 times a turn. Unless that's the situation, your party is probably not going to be much worse of a position and not be completely destroyed by this. But when you're looking into putting together the chain of your encounters, you would need to consider the fact that this encounter is going to be a little bit harder, and the way you might measure that is by reducing the still aim for it to take about 3 turns, but reduce the damage that the fighter and the rogue do by a third to represent the fact that they're only going to get 2 rounds of fighting in instead of 3. If it's but then if it's a situation where like you can't actually see it from range that well, and so you can do the same, but not to the fighter, and do it to the rogue, and do it to the cleric and wizard. And similar events like that, if it's things like the terrain itself actually contains traps, then include knowing that into the damage that the creature does. So aim for it to maybe only cause 0.8 of a individual character's death, because ultimately the characters will also stumble into their own death at the same time and trigger themselves to use their own resources. So there's not so much hard and fast rules. It's just sort of in a situation where it's going to be a bit more tricky than just the numbers on the page. Just be aware it's going to be a bit more tricky than just the numbers on the page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better. So yeah, I think they're the main questions that came to mind.
Yeah. The other thing to actually talk about is just come to my mind right now. Just because in one of the most recent sessions that we did, you guys fought a bunch of Eladrin with their little sort of 30-foot teleport ability that allowed them to effectively disengage for free. Now, that had a 50% uptime, so effectively every second turn they could make a free disengage action and teleport 30 feet before being able to move. This is effectively like having scenery that stops the melee characters being in range to attack. And so treat it like that. Just and if they have a ranged weapon as well, be aware that you can cause an awful lot of damage, more than you expect, and elongate the fight by having these teleporting characters going around there. So just be aware that the battle may go on for longer than you expect, and therefore the damage that the creatures do over time will be more. And that's not always a bad thing. I think it's sometimes fun to irritate the players with a difficult foe, because at least once they've encountered it once, they'll go out hopefully and find resources to help them deal with it should it happen again.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I think that is a really interesting tool, and because I've done my campaign now, so it would have been interesting actually seeing how much of a difference that made. I mean, how long have you actually been using this, and how much of a difference has it actually made, do you think, to your campaigns?
So I've only put it into writing in this style as I have just here today, when I was thinking about making because I've been thinking about it when making this video. It's not completely new. I have used this in like a this line of thought.
It's kind of that process.
This kind of like process, but not in like this much like crystallized structure. This is the process that I've used for making a number of my monsters more recently.
And how do you think it's improved since, when you're first doing D&D so many years back,
Well, when I first did D&D, I really encountered things like not appreciating the degree to which action economy is incredibly dangerous. It needs to kind of stay balanced. So realistically, I want my characters, both my players, to have about as many actions as my monsters do. And then you also discover the issues where you make a character of a similar level to other players, and you find it just doesn't work out great. So this isn't the answer to making homebrew monsters. This is a method to kind of see if you are massively out of where you expect you should be.
Okay. So kind of like a reference point.
Yes, this is exactly. This is a reference. This is fantastic for making something unique as a random encounter, rather than just saying, "Okay, I'll find something of challenge rating 10 in the monster manual. Ah, here we are. Oh, guys, this attacks. This means I can actually tailor it in advance." And contrary to this video being presently over the hour mark,
Okay.
contrary to this video, it's actually very quick.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because it's
it
also
is something that you can say to your players, "Oh, hey guys, 5 minutes breaks, go get a drink, go to get a snack, take a pee, and then you sit down, hammer, 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 make a monster that you can scroll down onto a piece of paper, call them all back to the table, and random encounter."
so it's very quick.
It's very quick. You can put it together. It's one of those things where it'll also be faster the more you know D&D. So if you are brand new, try keeping to the monster manual a little bit, because that will have the scaffolding and structure that you need to support it.
Yeah. They're forewarned. There's a few things in that probably should be slightly balanced, like, for instance, the mimic.
Well,
Which
anything
is like,
at low levels is very deadly, and anything that stops your players stops the player characters doing things, like a mimic that puts you into grapple. It's not just causing damage to you and stopping you moving around. It is actively encouraging you to not attack it, to try to get free from it, just in case when you tried to attack it, you didn't do enough to kill it and then it killed you first. So just be aware that there are some things and control effects. That's like we were saying with the fear. Keep in mind that that's going to make the encounter more difficult, and adjust your expectations for that. Even if you don't adjust the monster, adjust the future encounters, or just when you expect your party will take a break or a rest around that. Some things that you'll notice is some parties like to take a rest after every encounter, be it short or long. If they're doing that, don't let them. Attack them in the middle of the short rest or long rest.
can't go complacent. Can't just.
You could attack them in the middle of a short rest, actually, and that helps you in such a way as, and you can do the same during their long rest. If they win the encounter, it probably doesn't last long enough to stop their rest. They'll still get the rested effects. However, it does say to them, you need to start playing more smart, because there is still a risk in these rests, if you're taking them too frequently, that things will come for you. And if you're not taking these rests, if you're taking these rests so frequently, then they're going to get more opportunities to try to kill you when you're trying to gather your resources back. So pace yourself. But also, if they're doing that all the time, create some kind of story element that suggests that they shouldn't do it. So if they take an hour short rest after every encounter, go ahead and when they get to the end to save the villagers, have a bunch of the villagers be dead, and they check to see if they're cold, and a quick medicine check says these guys are about 50 minutes dead. If you hadn't taken, if you had been 50 minutes sooner, say, having not taken a short rest, they might still be alive now. And, have the idea that there is actually a time dependency on these things. And even if they just decide, okay, we're going to take a short rest, you can say things to them like, do you have time for a short rest? Even if they do have time for a short rest, you asking that is going to make them think
about it. Yeah.
And, if you agree they probably should be taking a short rest, don't mention it. Let them take the short rest. But if you think that they're being overly cautious, suggest to them that they don't need to be that cautious. There is an element of, I think some people like to keep roleplay here, out of character here, but realistically, your roleplay is here and your out of character is here, and in the middle you're playing a game. So they do overlap slightly. And
Yeah.
so it's okay for the DM to come in and say, as adventurers, you should feel that you're okay in the moment.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for showing us and sharing to us your process of creating quick monsters.
I hope
Encounters.
it helps people out.
Mm.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. This has been a bit of a long video, and I can say I am not looking forward to the amount of time this will take to upload. Whew. Yes. Seeing as with my current internet, for every minute of time takes about 3, maybe 2 minutes on a lucky day, and today's the internet's been rather slow. Well, it basically takes 3 times as long to upload. So this is me for the next 3 hours. I mean, this will probably be up maybe before
Anyone who makes it to the end of the video, by the way, I'll just give a round of applause. This is for you.
Yeah.
For making it this entire way.
Let
You're the
me know.
best.
Let me know if this is something that you find interesting. This has been a bit of a long-winded video. If you would much prefer it in shorter segments, please let me know. If there's a particular way you would have rather it be structured, please let me know. In the description below, I'll have access to this spreadsheet over here, and yeah, that'll be in the description below. And you can go ahead, make a copy of it, and play around with it. And maybe you'll find it useful as just sort of like a check for your own encounters. Maybe you won't. That's okay. Tell me what you don't like about it, and I hope to see you in the future. And thank you for sticking with us in this episode. See you next time.
See you next time.